Hello, I'm Susan Regan, host of Connecticut Valley Views, and my guest today is Joe Markley, who is a well-versed political commentator, which makes today an important interview regarding last night's 2024 presidential candidate debate. Mr. Markley was a member of the Connecticut State Senate, representing the 16th State Senate District from 2011 to 2019. He was the Republican nominee for Lieutenant Governor of Connecticut in 2018. Now, Joe, let's jump right into this. If you could give me a 1 or 2 word description of how you thought the debate was, what's the result?
Disaster is the word for Biden. And, you know, Susan, here's the funny thing I'd say about it. I wasn't surprised. In fact, in some ways, I didn't think that Biden did that bad compared to what I was expecting. But what the disaster is that it seems like everybody else has seen what some of us saw all along, which is that Biden is an old man, and there's some very sharp older people, but Joe Biden is not one of them at this point. And the losing his way, not being able to get to the end of sentences, not being able to keep his thoughts straight. This is something that it's been going on for a while. It's been denied and successfully denied. Last night, it seems everybody saw it. And the interesting thing is the Democrats and their media allies have stopped trying to say, "Don't believe your lying eyes," and now they've shifted to, there's people talking about this. Biden needs to go. It's a very interesting situation. I've been saying all along that I thought there was an excellent chance Biden wouldn't be on the ballot in November, in fact, almost entirely for this reason. It certainly looks possible now. There are ways that can happen. It's funny. I'll say that I feel a kind of a curiosity hour to hour that I haven't felt since the Monica Lewinsky thing began when Clinton was president. Because there was a moment there in the first days of that scandal that people were thinking, gee, is Clinton going to make it to the end of the week? And this is an important thing to keep in mind with this news, too. At the moment, the wolves are circling Biden. But if Biden refuses to budge, there comes a point where those same wolves are going to say, well, I guess we got to live with this guy. And it's going to shift from Biden's got to go to we have to stick with Biden because the alternative is Trump. But there was no surprise to me. And in fact, I was wondering if the press would take it as badly as it looked, but they did.
Yes. Well, apparently there's a videotape that's out where CNN obviously cut the part out, but after they finished the debate, completed it, done, they're still standing at the podium. After that, apparently his wife, Jill Biden, came up, took his hand, and had to lead him off the stage. And then there was another gentleman who was right there at the stairs and was pointing out, watch out for the stairs.
The stair. Yeah.
The stair, right. And so that was there. I think also, I just get this feeling, who is it who is really, is it Joe Biden planting his feet? Because it seems like it's either Jill or he are planting their feet because Jill wants to be back in the White House. Because he seems to be being a bit of a sticky wicket when it comes to leaving. And he, I can do it. And then he addressed his age. He addressed his age himself at the end.
Well, he's always been full of himself. And I think he's been told over the years, you can't do it. It's not going to happen. And here he is, president of the United States. So he doesn't want to walk away from it. What Jill Biden is thinking, I don't really know. It's certainly, you would think that a compassionate spouse would look at that situation and say, I don't really want my husband out there struggling the way he struggled, embarrassing himself, now having to hear from people that he doesn't have all his marbles. Yeah. That's a tough thing to hear. There may be a point where she says, where she's convinced that he needs to go. The alternative is, the wise men of the party, Obama, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, whatever, a delegation comes to the White House and says to both of them, listen, we can't go on with this. But in the end, Biden's got the delegates, and I don't think unless he's willing to say that's it, I think it's very unlikely that there'd be a way for them to decide that they were going to free themselves and do something else. And of course, that opens a whole nother question, which is, if it isn't Biden, who's it going to be? And that's also a tough situation for the party because their vice president is also such a weak character.
Yes, yeah, I think they're going to figure out a way to toss her out now. They're going to have her run for governor and bring in Newsom for, president or whatever. Or Michelle Obama. I mean, that is one of the things going around saying that
people say that. I mean, the thing about it is that somebody's got to want to do it themselves. And I don't know that Michelle Obama wants to necessarily. And, the other thing I'd say is that I really feel like the Democrats, Kamala Harris has her set of problems. Gavin Newsom has a set of problems, which is called California. He's got a great haircut, but his record is not much to run on. I don't think Gretchen Whitman is necessarily the choice. If the Democrats were really smart to go back to the last competitive presidential election, somebody like Amy Klobuchar, who even I looked at and said, I think I could go to bed at night. I'm not saying I'd vote for her or that I'd want her, but I would feel like I've got a garden variety Democrat. I don't have a crazy progressive.
Yeah. All right. So on another note, personally myself, I thought that the CNN commentators, the moderators, I thought they did a pretty good job, a pretty fair job. They obviously didn't have to herd the cats because there were so many limitations on everybody and what they could say, and mics getting shut off, and so there wasn't a lot of yelling back and forth and so forth. So if you were to give them a score 1 to 10, what would you give them? And did you feel the questions were fair?
I thought they were fine. I thought the questions were fine, and I thought what they did was fine. Now, what they did was not exceptional, so maybe I give them a 7 or something, right? But leaving the number aside, I'm glad that they didn't insert themselves too much. Again, the liberals are saying this morning, they didn't fact check Trump. I'm so tired of the commentators arguing with the person who's giving the answer. That's up to the listeners to make their mind up about. It's up to the press to report the next day. It's not something that they should be on the spot saying that's not true. They didn't do that. And the other thing they didn't do, which I think they were right not to do, was to try to force people, and I think especially this was Trump, to answer the question. And they kind of, in fact, Tapper kind of said early on, I'm going to ask you a question, but you use your time however you want to. I'd say that's how I've always felt when I was in a forum, too. I might answer a question quickly so I could get on to something else or move in a different direction. They couldn't have controlled that anyways. In Trump's case, because who can control Trump? And in Biden's case, because when Biden didn't answer a question, I don't think it was because he was not trying to answer the question. I think it's because he didn't know what the question was.
Right.
So there wasn't much for them to accomplish that way. I thought they were fine, and I thought the format was good. I like the idea of saying, we're turning off the microphone when the time is up. I mean, that's clean.
Yes.
And so all of that was fine with me.
Yeah. Now, I would say from your previous comments you made just a moment ago, who do you think had the upper hand? I would take it you think Donald Trump. I mean, he didn't go off track. He obviously wasn't really allowed to rant. He wasn't able to attack Biden while he was talking and so forth. So do you feel that Trump actually did as good a job as we expected him to do, or did you feel that he was lacking anywhere?
Well, again, I would say that Trump was about what I expected, just as Biden was about what I expected. I mean, the trouble with Trump, if it were anyone but Biden, the Democrats would be winning easily, and if it were anyone but Trump, the Republicans would be winning easily. The good thing about Trump is he seemed 20 years younger than Biden. Obviously, yes. He seemed like a vigorous man. He was expressive. He was Trump, for better or for worse.
Yes.
What is hysterical to me about it is that so much of it was him saying, we had the best economy in the history of the world, and now we have the worst economy in the history of the world. A number of extreme statements, few of which I think were actually literally true.
Mhm.
And I kind of feel like you could just come out and state actual facts
Mhm.
and probably be more persuasive than you are with this hyperbole that Trump is addicted to.
Mhm.
But that's how he's been. That's how he's always been, and that's how he's always going to be. I don't like it. I mean, I really, the fact that I think that Biden is clearly incapable of being president doesn't mean that I think that Trump is the right man for the job either. I think Trump had 4 years in which, in the whole 4 years, he was never really able to put together an administration. He had people coming and going. Most of the people that worked for him at some point have come out and written books about what a disaster he was. I don't know how he goes in if he wins in November and brings in a team that can do what he has in mind. And one of the reasons is because I don't think he's ever clear about what he has in mind. Ronald Reagan was not, let's say he was not a detail-oriented guy, but he charted a clear course, and he was able to attract people that believed in that course and believed in his ability to communicate it and his ability to stick to it. So when he became president, he had the Devers and the Mises and these different people that have been with him for years. Trump doesn't have anyone like that. And I don't think he'd be any more effective in a second term than he was in the first. So I mean, I'm distressed by the fact that this is our choice, and I really was hoping that DeSantis or somebody would make some headway, but
Sure.
It wasn't even close. That just didn't happen.
Yes. Well, of course, there are a lot of rumors going around. There's a short list for who the vice presidential pick would be. Do you think Trump is okay? So Biden's got the Kamala Harris problem.
Yeah.
Trump, do you think he's going to pick someone that he can rely on and delegate to that is in the realm of accomplishing what he wants to accomplish? Or do you think he just wants to delegate and not have to think too much about it? Is he going to choose someone who's reflective of him or someone who perhaps other qualities? And Nikki Haley is still in the running, which to me seems a little bit strange. And Bergman seems to be a good choice, and Tim Scott could be a good choice. Where do you think he's going?
Oh, I don't know. Again, I think that one of the problems is that Trump is so mercurial in his thinking, even though he's come out and said, I've made my choice. And I think it doesn't really matter because he could wake up tomorrow, if he has made his choice, and decide that he changed his mind. I also don't think that I can't imagine him really delegating effectively to anybody. He didn't seem like he was able to do it when he was president last time. He made an excellent choice for vice president last time. A very solid guy who reassured conservatives and who stood by him extremely effectively for 4 years until January 6th, when he didn't do exactly what Trump wanted him to do, and now he's off. I would say anyone who's thinking of this nomination, J.D. Vance, Tim Scott, these various characters, have to think, is this really a good move for me? Laying aside everything else. Will I have any real influence over the man? Probably not. Is it going to be good for my political future? Probably not. I think a lot of the Republicans that are around Trump at this point are doing it because they think, this guy may be president and he better have some sane people around him. And if I'm not there, then what kind of crazy is going to take my place? And that could well be what one of these people is thinking. I don't think any of them makes too much difference about the number of votes Trump gets, because people are either going to swallow Trump or they're not at this point.
It's an interesting point. Yes. Yeah. You
Yeah.
don't think it's too much difference. That's an interesting comment. With regard to people's overall concern, do you think it's inflation, the cost of everything? Do you think it's the immigrants? Do you think it's the wars overseas? Do you think that our big deficit, because we're giving away so much money, the defense of Israel by Biden, what do you think is governing the people particularly who have been somewhat sitting on the fence. I'm not sure. Where do you think the greatest stress point for the citizens of the United States lies?
Everything you've mentioned is big, and everything you've mentioned concerns me as well. And I would throw in the woke agenda, the transgender world, these operations being performed on children and so forth. And different people may be moved by different things. I think the immigration issue that was what made Donald Trump the nominee and the president in 2016, in my opinion, remains an enormous issue, and one that he is particularly well positioned to take advantage of. The trouble is, just like Trump, that just in the last week he came out and said, well, I think that maybe we should give green cards to foreign students who graduate from college, even from a 2-year college. And I think, what is he thinking? It's just another way. If you did that, especially if you opened it up to 2-year colleges, what we would have is an explosion of 2-year colleges that just existed so that foreign students could come in and get green cards. These for-profit places that have been a problem for years. If he could stay to his talking points, I think he'd be in an excellent position to win this election. I'm not sure he can do it. He's in a good position to win the election right now, because if Biden remains the candidate, there really comes a point where people just can't vote for him. If they switch out Biden for somebody else, I think that the Democrats will probably win the election.
Yeah. What about the point, do you feel that Biden has lost the black vote because it appears that he seems to be favoring, because generally speaking, they were supposed to lead the underserved folks, and he was taking care of them and trying to make things better and so forth. But now he appears to be favoring the immigrants because he wants to bring in as many potential Democratic votes for that. Do you feel that's the reason why he's losing the black Hispanic vote, black, brown?
Well, yeah, and inflation, which people are very aware of. Again, Biden's in the position of running around and saying, don't believe your own experience, but people do believe their own experience. And they know that prices went up radically. And I think that's more of a problem for minority communities where income is lower, people on fixed income. The other thing I'd say about both these men, which I don't respect at all, is the whole idea of saying, what are you doing for blacks? What are you doing for Hispanics? Especially the conversation about that last night was grotesque to my mind. And especially because so much of it was about what I do for blacks equals poverty programs. Because my assumption is these are poor people. President Otis, if I were back in politics at this point, I would say, I'm not going to do anything for blacks. I'm not going to do anything for whites, Hispanics, Asians, anyone else. I want a strong state of Connecticut or a strong United States of America, good jobs, strong dollar, all these things. And that's going to help everybody. I'm not going out there saying, let me help this group, because that's not who we are as Americans. But this outlook has become so pervasive that the Republicans have fallen for it too, in my opinion.
Yeah. All right. What do you, if you were counseling Biden or if you're counseling Trump, what do you think Biden's next step is? I mean, it would seem stepping down might be the right thing to do, or he should announce who his vice president. Well, I guess Kamala Harris is in a dither because she's not being included to be on the ticket if he stays. So if you were counseling both of them, what would you say to Biden and what would you say to Trump?
Well, if Biden cares about the party, and if Biden believes that Democratic victory is essential for America, which he claims to, and for all I know, he's sincere about it, he ought to be helping work with the party insiders to figure out a way to get out of the way and have them settle on some other person. And this is very possible to do. If they, and I wouldn't be surprised if nothing happens about this for a week or 10 days, if there's not plotting going on. And the plotting is going to be not simply, let's get Biden off the ticket, but let's settle between us, Obama, Schumer, Pelosi, whoever is inside that room, on what the ticket's going to be. And then we come out and it's a package deal, and there isn't a big fight at the convention. And if they find somebody that America can live with, I think it would be welcomed by a lot of people. So that would be my advice to Biden and his circle. To Trump, there's no point in giving advice to Donald Trump, in my opinion. People have been saying this all, if he'd only do this, why doesn't he stop tweeting all this stuff? Here's a man who came out of nowhere. Everybody told him he couldn't do it. He got elected president. He didn't listen to anyone. Right. And he's still on the top of the heap. He's not going to suddenly decide now that he needs to be taking people's advice. I simply wish he were a different man. He has tremendous communication skills in a way. He knows how to get the attention. He comes across vividly. Even last night, I got to say, I can't stand him on a certain level. And yet I get a kick out of him on a certain level. He's so loosey-goosey. Yeah. He's willing to go places that politicians don't go. As soon as I saw that, I thought he's got a chance at the nomination back in 2016. But there's nothing to tell him. The smart thing for him to do would be to say, hey, Donald, here's your speech, the economy, the border, the foreign wars. Talk about all these things that the Democrats are doing that are monstrous, and stop talking about nonsense. But he's never going to stop. I love the conversation about the golf game. That was one of the most amazing moments. I thought I'm glad I watched it just to have seen that, because I thought this is like, if you saw it on Saturday Night Live, you wouldn't believe it. Two old men arguing about who's got a bigger handicap. Yeah,
well, a 6 handicap is not even possible for Biden, because I know a little bit about golf, and if he's got a bad back, he's not going to be able to do a professional swing, which requires you to turn all the way, not break your wrists, not bend your knees too much. He wouldn't be able to accomplish that.
No. Well, Trump himself pointed out Biden couldn't drive a golf ball 50 yards. I thought it's a funny exchange. I've seen your swing, Joe. You couldn't hit a golf ball 50 yards.
All right. All right. Just touching a little bit closer to home for a moment, relevant to a local Connecticut basis. Do you believe that the replacement of Annalisa Stravato, a pro-Trump person, for Leora Levy as the RNC, National Republican Woman, was a payback for Levy beating Themis Klarides in the Senate race?
Absolutely. And ridiculous. And first, let me say, incidentally, they are both pro-Trump people. So Trump was not a factor.
Right.
But for whatever reason, there was bad feelings for those whole 2 years. Leora had every right to run against Themis. I don't have anything against either of them. But to punish Leora for actually winning the primary, I mean, if it's not like she stood in the way of Themis, being able to get her campaign started early. Right. Themis's campaign wasn't strong enough to beat Leora. And I had a member of State Central call me. I was on the radio the next day after the election talking about it. And someone called me up and said, Joe, the election's over. We've got to get behind the winner. And I said that the Themis primary was over for 2 years, but you guys couldn't let go.
Yeah, right.
And let me say, Leora Levy did an amazing job as Republican National Committee woman. She's a smart, classy woman. I think
good at raising money in her area. Yeah.
Raising money tremendously, and I think it was a huge mistake by the Connecticut Republican Party.
Yeah. Okay. With regard now, I noticed that Biden keeps calling Trump a liar, a felon. I think off camera we've also people refer to him as a rapist and so forth. But obviously he's got the baggage of his son Hunter.
Yeah.
Do you think Hunter's having an impact as well on Biden's position or opportunity or whatever?
I think 90% of the population is firmly in one camp or the other. And the swing voters, we were talking about these various issues. I'm not sure what's going to move them. There's a element of sleaze circles around Trump, and there's this element of sleaze circles around Biden. Anything that confirms people's sense that something sleazy is going on is going to hurt them somewhat. But it's not going to change the perception. I mean, anybody who's walking around saying, Joe Biden never did anything wrong, there's nothing, that's a Biden voter. You're never going to change their mind. And just like the Trump voters, who the fact of a conviction isn't going to make any difference to them. And to some extent, I understand it. I do feel like this was prosecution, which wouldn't have taken place otherwise. But Donald Trump's a man who put himself in the way of such problems. He with the rape accusation, where his problem wasn't whether he was convicted of the rape. He wouldn't testify in the trial, which was suspicious. I mean, certainly if I were accused of something like that, I'd insist on being there. I wouldn't care what my lawyer said. And the fact that he continued to make the claim and got these judgments against him. We're going to see the same thing with Biden. I don't doubt that Biden and his son and his brother and different ones were involved in shady dealings. But I don't think it's going to change the minds of very many people. It's a terrible thing that we're accepting these kinds of men as reasonable candidates for president of the United States.
All right. Now, you've commentated today the way you normally do. You're very candid. I think you do try and be objective and so forth. If people want to follow you, you do a podcast or you have social media where they can contact you, what would that be?
Well, I can be reached by email by anybody, joe@joemarkley.com. I've got a Facebook page, a Joe Markley Facebook page, and also a Joe Markley on Politics page, which I post on sometimes. I'm on the radio on WTIC and also on WDRC on a regular basis. But I'm not in politics anymore. Right. I love talking about it, Susan. I love talking about it with you too. You're good.
Thank you. Thank you.
But I'm not doing political stuff. I do a video every now and then and send it to my list. If anybody wants to see it, they can go to my Facebook page. They'll find it.
Great. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time, as usual. And I do enjoy speaking with you as well. And for our viewers, I thank them for joining us today. You can follow all of our shows. Check your local PATV airing stations for time to see it. But you can always see this segment and all of our segments on ctvalleyviews.com. Susan Regan signing off as host of CTVV today.